don't do monthly wrap-ups anymore, but I do have some books that I want to talk to you guys about, so let's talk. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about some books that I have read recently. Here's the thing, I can't really fit monthly wrap-ups onto my schedule anymore, but I still have books that I want to talk to y'all about, so I figured why don't we just sit down every now and then and talk about things that I have read recently. Here are 6 books that I have read recently and I wanted to chat with you guys about because some of them I loved and some of them I didn't. Some of them we're about to spill the tea. First book I want to talk to y'all about is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. This is an adult fantasy novel, and let me tell you, this was written for the prequel trilogy girlies. Like, if you are a kid that was obsessed with Anakin, and Obi-Wan. Anakin, yeah. No, he did a lot of that, actually. If you were obsessed with Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan growing up, or at any time in your life, this is for you. Let's talk about what we are dealing with. We have 2 siblings in this novel. On the one hand, we have Geyer, and on the other hand, we have Maya. Maya was taken away from her family by the Order when she was very sick. The Order is, like, literally think of the Jedi. They are a world-spanning organization that uses, like, it's a type of magic. It's not Doc, which is the bad magic. It's something else that I can't remember the name of. Maya is taken away when she is 5, and this leaves an indelible impression upon Geyer, especially considering that the person that took Maya away took out his eye. That leads to Geyer growing up hating the Order, and Maya growing up within the Order. They haven't had any contact since they were children. There's an odd encounter that happens with her master that has kind of a cascading line of events that lead to some things not being great, and now suddenly Maya is having to clear her master's name. On the other end, we have Geyer, who is currently making his entire life's purpose taking down the Order that took his sister, with full knowledge that his sister is probably one of them at this point. We meet him at the very beginning when he and some of his friends are trying to get together different Doc items in order to take down the Order. So I don't know if the intro to this, like, clues you guys into this, but I was a Star Wars girly growing up. I kind of got mad after Revenge of the Sith, and then the sequel trilogy let me down. I've read a lot of the EU. I've listened to a lot of, like, not a lot of, but, like, I've read and heard about different bits of interviews that George Lucas has done. So I kind of understand some of the things that he was trying to do when he went in to do episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the prequel trilogy. This is covering a lot of those same themes, and because it is a novel, we are able to get so deep into some of that kind of questioning of authority, of power, of how do you make a just society. That is the real conflict that we see both being the thing that both Maya and Geyer want. They want a just society, but they have disagreements on how that should happen. We also see some confrontation with Geyer of, okay, well, if you do this, what is the next possible step? Because taking down the Order is going to lead to massive societal upheaval that could end up with death on a massive scale. However, there are also people who are suffering as a, like, part of the Order doing business. A lot of those things come up. There are questions. We really get to see the cracks in this large governmental order. I got the impression, at least, that the Order is pretty much running things here. They were given their teachings from someone called the Chosen, and they're supposed to be keeping things correct until the Chosen came back. Chosen haven't been seen in a very long time, and so, like, if they ever existed, they are no longer here. I really like that. I like how it's questioning a lot of the things that we see ourselves struggling with in a, you know, a day-to-day basis. I think that this is a great, fun fantasy novel for those that are looking for that kind of Star Wars-esque. I had a real fun time with this. I gave it 4 stars. It engages with concepts that I like being engaged with when I am reading, when I am watching. I like thinking about those things, and you quite often find those even if you may not pick up on them, even if you're able to kind of like you can read this with your brain turned off and not make any of the parallels that I made when I was reading it, but you can also be engaging with those concepts as you're reading it, and I appreciate books that are like that. That's what I want out of my novels. Both Geyer and Maya have very distinct points of view and ways that they look at the world. Like, it's one of those things where you can see they both have the same goal, they just have to find a way to get to where that goal, like, they're using the same methods, and currently, like I said, they disagree on the methods. I see the arguments on both sides. I see why Geyer thinks that the Order needs to change, that things cannot continue on as they are. I also see why Maya thinks this is the best way for things to continue on. Highly recommend this if you are looking for something like that. I really enjoyed this kind of very real world fantasy-esque type take on a lot of the tropes that make Star Wars so special. Like, they literally have laser swords. Like, it's not subtle about this, and I love it. I love it because, like, that's what I want. I will say that there is a little sapphic relationship in this. There's also a relationship on Geyer's end that I don't even know what's going on there. I did read this, by the way, as part of a vlog where I read 3 of Brianna's favorite books. If you want to check that out, I will have it linked down below. Anyways, highly recommend it. Check it out. I don't count rereads as favorite book of the month, so this is my official favorite book of the month. And that is Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. I can't tell you what this is about. I can. I sort of can, but I can't. So this is the sequel to My Heart is a Chainsaw, which, if you guys will remember, is one of the few books that has the distinction of me giving it 1 rating, sitting back, thinking about it, and then going, nah, this is actually a 5-star book, because I wouldn't shut up about it. I kept telling people about it. I was like, if I'm talking about this book this much, and it's not because I hate it, it's because I loved it, it's 5 stars. Anyways, long story short, this is an adult horror. My Heart is a Chainsaw, the first book, we are following Jade Daniels. She is a teenager about to graduate high school, and she is doing, as part of her final, like, she's doing kind of a makeup work so her teacher will pass her in her English class, I believe it is, something like that, and she is examining in this book, or in that, as a part of that project, she's examining different tropes in horror movies. She's very much the weird kid at school, not just because of this, but because of other things, and the fact that she is a bit of a loner type. Like, the way that they do Jade as a loner is just so, it's so interesting. The thing you need to know about her is that she views everything through the lens of these slasher films. She feels like she's been preparing for a slasher her entire life. So when dead bodies that have been gruesomely murdered start popping up in her little town of Proof Rock, she's like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And she starts looking for the final girl. She is convinced it is this girl named Letha Mondragon. You'll have to read the book to come to your own conclusions on who the actual final girl is, but she is convinced that it is Letha Mondragon. This one we are picking up 5 years later. Jade has gotten herself into a little bit of trouble and ended up in jail. And so we're picking up as she is being released from jail, as this really old, really renowned killer has suddenly gone missing while he was being transported for trial. And Jade is plunged right back into all of the mess that she had to deal with in the last book, as Proof Rock is rocked yet again by yet another set of serial gruesome murders. So the thing that I loved so much about the first book is that, as someone who does not engage very often with the horror genre, as someone who has not seen a single slasher filmed, blame it on my mother, because we had those random essays between chapters, I didn't feel like I was missing out. Jade was talking about some of the things that would then be referenced in the text, and the way that Stephen Graham Jones does it, it just works so well. It's almost like a multimedia format book. I didn't feel like I was missing out. I didn't feel like I needed to have gone. I want to go and see some of those films. I didn't feel like I needed to have gone and seen all of those films to get the book. So I think that it is very accessible for those who are cool with a lot of blood and guts and gore, but have not watched any like, you don't have to have watched the movies that Jade is discussing for it to still make sense, because she's talking about the tropes overall and pulling examples from different things. This one was interesting because we take a little bit more of a true crime lens, and it is not Jade doing the English project in this one. It is someone else. I can't tell you who it is, but just it's very obvious from the get-go that it is not Jade. I love the way that Stephen Graham Jones writes Jade. He has the distinction of me not having a single moment in either of these books where I was like, well, that definitely was written by a man. Like, hasn't happened. I also really like the way that Jade uses horror and slasher as a coping mechanism, especially in the first book, to view the world and to make sense of the things that have happened to her. I will be the first to say, it is not for the, like, find the trigger warnings. I know there's a lot of body horror. I know that there is some talk of CSA and SA in the book, especially when we get into the backstory of, because it's multi point of view, like both of them are multi-point of view. So like there are places where we get into some of that. Know that that is in there. It is gory. It is bloody. People are losing limbs and faces and just all kinds of things. So these are not going to be books for everyone. There were a couple of places in this one where I had to put the book down and look away for a minute. There were eye things. I don't like. I know there are people that watch my channel who do not like eye things, so I'm not going to describe what the eye thing was, but it made me a little queasy for a minute. I love the way that Jade examines the world and sees the world, and I love her obsession and her absolute obtuseness when it comes to this final girl thing. Like, she is so wrong, and you're sitting there, both of the book, going, when are you gonna figure it out? When are you gonna this is what is actually, like, what you would you just actually acknowledge what is going on here and, like, what the signs, where the signs are pointing, ma'am? Would you just please sit down and acknowledge that? And I love her so much because she's in such denial about what's actually happening. If you want to read a really well-written book with a female protagonist that has multiple points of view, that is a horror, that really examines, like, the way that he examines in the first book, like, being a teenager and being in high school using horror, and then in this one he examines her trying to figure out, how do I fit back into the world, like, having to go through this whole thing there. And it's just, it's so good. It's so good. Please, if you have any interest in these books, read them. I know some of his novellas, I've heard people talk about his novellas and them being, like, slam-packed with just gut-wrenching stuff and gut-churning stuff. And I would say that if you have read his novellas and those have kind of turned you off to his, to the content in his books, I would say potentially still think about giving some of his actual novels a try, especially this particular series. I can't vouch for the other ones, but I think he spaces things out a little bit more in these. They're thick ones. They're nice. They're nice chunk. I mean, they're not chonky, but they're a good size. I feel like he has a little bit more room for the audience or the reader to breathe in these. And the way that he centers Jade's experience and then other teenage girls' experiences in what's going on here, I just think he does a really good job with that, and I think you should read it. I don't know that everyone should read it, because, again, very gory, but I think you should read it. All right, the next two I've read at separate times in the month, but we're going to talk about them together because they're part of the same series, and that is All Systems Red and Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This one I forced my brother to read with me. This one he has not read yet, but I went ahead and read it anyways, because this one we were in the same place, so he didn't have a choice. This one I was back home, so I couldn't force him. It's unfortunate. Listen, if Logan from X-Men is your favorite character, you like how just, like, of a grumpy old man, wants to be a loner but can't seem to stay away from people type character, read these. This is like Logan if he was a cyborg and a bit younger, and also obsessed with space opera TV shows. This is an adult sci-fi series. We are following Murderbot, and they are a sec unit. Murderbot has hacked their governor module. That is the thing in their circuitry or their brain, whatever, like their motherboard. I don't know, whatever the heck it is that it would be a cyborg brain. They've hacked it, so they don't technically have to follow all of the orders that they are given. They have some choice. They do not get punished for choosing not to follow orders. However, they are still trying to live undercover and not clue anyone into the fact that they have done this, because if they are clued into the fact that they have done this, if people know that, then they will be hunted down because they will then be a rogue sec unit. They just want to be left alone outside of missions and watch their show, and they want to be fully in control of their choices, though. They go on what they think is a normal job, helping a crew survey a planet, and then the job starts to go wrong, and suddenly Murderbot has these, like, 4 or 5 humans that they are tasked with keeping alive that are being much more difficult to keep alive than they should be, and he's so mad about it. He's so mad about it. He's so mad that he cares. And it's adorable watching him deal with that and then continue on throughout the series with the fallout from this first novel. These are short, they're quick, they're fun. They are not meant to, like, I think of these the way that I think of, for example, volumes in a comic series. I think a lot of authors put in this situation where they have books this short, where they are doing, they would try to wrap certain things up in a way that is satisfying in the first one and then move on. And I think when people do that, typically you see a lot of things feeling rushed. However, Martha Wells has really looked at these as installments, as episodes, as like seasons of a show almost, where we are dealing with this one conflict, and when the one conflict is over, the story is over. However, what's going on with Murderbot is still being taken through like, it's not done yet. We know that there is still stuff that is unanswered. There is still stuff that we need to look into. There is still things that Murderbot is working through. Like I said, there is a lot about, is Murderbot a person? Are they not human, but they are sentient? So what does that make them? And they are looking at their place in the world and struggling with that kind of self-knowledge that they're not human, but they're not a bot. They have sentience, they have thought, they are able to like think through things because they have to be able to do that. They're programmed to be able to do that because of their job. It's a very, very fun sci-fi world. However, the character and the plot are the thing that the central focus. So I think this is a very good series if you are trying to get into sci-fi. Number one, because they're short. They're not very daunting. They're also fun as can be. The audiobook narrator for them is fantastic. They are very light on jargon because they don't revolve around the technology. It is just there as set dressing. It is there to build the world. It is there to inform the story. It is there to put Murderbot in difficult situations. Because of that, I think this is very accessible for people who are trying to get into this genre. I also think, as someone who reads a lot of sci-fi and has been raised on sci-fi, I mentioned Star Wars, I was raised on Star Trek too. As someone who loves sci-fi, I loved these. I feel like they are great for new fans and old fans of sci-fi alike, and I just please check these out. I gave this one 4 stars the first time I read it, 5 stars this time. This one got 5 stars the first time I read it, and 4 stars this time. I don't understand what happened there. Just know these are 2 of my absolute favorite books of all time, and this might be a new favorite series of all time. We'll see. I'm like 4 books deep on the novel. You will see more of this guy. This is, I guess, the moment of rereads, because we're also going to be talking about A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. There is a new book in this series out. Well, there's a new series in this series out. Like, it's not a part of the series, but it is a part of the world and involves the characters here. I'm not sure how that situation is working out because I haven't gotten to that book yet because I wanted to reread this. I've been dying. I've been wanting for the longest time to reread these books. It's been a while. I think 2018 was the last time whenever we did A Darker Shade of Read Along, or whenever that was happening, that was the last time I read these books. They are some of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely adore the world that Victoria Schwab has built in here. This book starts out with the absolutely just fantastic first sentence of, Kel wore a very peculiar coat. You may infer from that our main character is named Kel. He is what is known as an Antari, and the Antari have a very special skill that is pretty much extinct. There's like 2 of them left. They are able to use blood magic to pass between the worlds. Kel lives in what he calls Red London, and then he also is quite often going back and forth between White London and then Grey London, which is on the Vale on the other side of his world. In his travels back and forth, a couple things happened. Number one, he gets his hands on an artifact that he really shouldn't have and shouldn't be transporting between the Londons, but he does, and there is a fallout from that. The other thing that happens is that during one of his trips to Grey London, he gets pickpocketed by a thief named Lila Bard. She's one of my favorite characters to ever exist. Lila pickpockets him, takes this artifact, and then he has to go track it down. And when he does end up tracking it down, some stuff happens. The end result of all of that stuff happening is Lila going, take me with you, which is not supposed to be possible. She should not be able to travel between the worlds. He's not supposed to be able to take her with him, but he does end up being able to take her as he is going back across the worlds because he needs to get to the other side of White London, which is a world that was overtaken with magic and no longer exists. You guys have heard me talk about this series. This series would just, like, I just slapped myself in the face with my favorite book. The entire point of this was for me to be able to, like, go through it and tab things up, and just the things that I noticed this time around. Victoria Schwab is the, like, queen of slow build. She likes plots where she is slowly revealing things and slowly exploring things with her character. She'd probably be a very good DM. It was so funny because I remember being like a quarter to a third of the way through and going, huh, most of the things that I remember happening in this book haven't happened yet. You don't feel it. You don't feel like you're just being drawn into this amazing, interesting world where you have all of these different portal travel, and I love me a good portal fantasy. They make me happy. I enjoy them. It's always fun to see how different worlds react. I love this series. I love Kel and Lila. They are my favorite characters in the series, and the shenanigans that they go through with each other and for each other sometimes, like, just It's very interesting. I know a lot of people dislike Lila, and I typically have some beef with those people because the thing about Lila is she is a very angry, selfish, stabby girl. She is out to survive. Like, that is her main goal. I know she gets like the what's the word? The accusation of girl hate thrown at her a lot, and I think on some level that is fair, but I also think the thing that I noticed this time around was that when she is, like, the specific thoughts that she has that are negative towards other women are specifically negative towards rich women. I don't think it is actually like an internalized misogyny thing so much as it is a class wars thing. The entire point is just like, a lot of people will be like, she's this, and then they will like Kaz Brecker, who does the exact same things. Who's also selfish, who's also very angry. We meet her when she is still the only person she's ever been able to depend upon is herself, and then something happens, and she ends up wanting revenge. Kel, on the other hand, is like, there's a lot of questions about, there's a lot of exploration about family and what does family mean, and a lot of exploration about being independent. I think that is a theme that we see in both Kel and Lila's storylines to differing degrees and for different reasons. Because Kel is very privileged. He was brought up beside the prince of his realm, like partly as a way to control him, but also partly because the royal family became his family. All right, we're gonna end this on a downer, and I apologize for that, but it was the last, well, technically Artificial Condition was the last book that I read for this period that we're going through, let me tell you, the group chat, when I was texting people, I'm not going through to look for those texts, but so many people are like, Margaret, why are you continuing to read this book? And the reason I continued to read the book is because I'm nosy, and it's messy, and I needed to know what was going to happen. That book would be The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. Gave this 2 stars. It's not the worst book I've ever read. Definitely, it's far from there. It's far from there. But it was not a book for me. And then it also was not, there were just issues that I had with things in this book. But this is an adult contemporary, witchy contemporary. This book didn't know what it wanted to be. That is like, is it a family drama? Is it a rom-com? It's a second chance romance between our main character, Sadie. Yeah, our main character, Sadie, and then her old boyfriend has come back into the town at the same time that she just finds out that her grandmother is dying of cancer. And as a result of her grandmother dying of cancer, some other bombshells get dropped on her, and her twin brother, Seth, is suddenly back in town after having left town and not spoken to anyone for, I think, like a year, 2 years, something like that. She has magic that is tied to baking, and some of the recipes in there here did sound very interesting, but she has magic that is tied to baking, and it is acting up, and we have all of that. That is all going on in this novel, just in the first little bit. Actually, no, it took a really long time for her brother to show up, but that is something that is on the back of the book, so it's fair game. My biggest problems with this book were that it didn't know what it wanted to be, and that I just hated the end, not hated, but the ending. I don't, like, it is, I don't want to spoil it, but it is a thing that happens quite often when you have stories with women and magic, and I didn't like how it was handled, and I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done poorly, and this was it done poorly. That's all I will say about that. And then the other thing is, I hated the romance. They'd be cute, but then stuff would, and I was so done with them. I couldn't, like, there was no point where I was rooting for them to get back together in this book. Like, not a single moment. They build this up, they do this whole thing. Her magic makes her able to, like, I just, like, oh, I forgot about that. She basically kind of magically roofies, not, like, I don't know if it would be a roofie. It's like, it's a truth serum. She is able to make a truth serum through baking with her magic. And I was just like, I don't like that. There were so many questions of consent when it came to her magic and what she was able to do with her magic and, like, how she was able to affect people. And no one really knows that she has this magic and this is what it does, including the guy who was dating her in high school. That did, like, the entire, like, I was like, dude, you deserve better. She also ended up deserving better for reasons that I can't get into because plot stuff, but that plot stuff was was purely there to keep them from getting together. Like, I don't understand why we had to have as much stuff going on in here as we did, because like just having a main character that is rekindling a old relationship and dealing with that at the same time that she is losing her grandmother would have been enough. We didn't need to have all this will they, won't they with the relationship. I would have actually preferred it if he'd gotten, you know, returned. We just had a really quick like, oh, okay, cool, we're together now. And then she'd had that support through her grandmother's sickness. Now, the reason this got 2 stars and not 1 star is I did like her family. The family stuff, the stuff going on with Sadie, her grandmother, her aunts and uncles, her brother, her mom, that stuff was really interesting. I enjoyed those plot lines. I enjoyed what we were doing with those plot lines. I was always like, anytime that came up, I don't know if it was just because I was so annoyed with the romance or what, but anytime that came up, I was relieved. I was invested in that part. And that's why I continued reading the book, because I was invested in that. I was invested in her working things out with her brother and all of those things. I just couldn't stand the romance. And I had questions about like how her magic was like treated as it is a good thing. And I was just like, but she is overriding people's ability to choose, kind of, it feels like here. And that annoyed the heck out of me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. There was just so much going on in this book, and I was just like, we needed to like take like 1 or 2 of these elements out and then just really flesh out the rest. The writing style was fine, but I couldn't with this. I finished it. That's what happened. Unfortunate, because it started out promising. I liked the concept, but in execution, it was not for me. All right, now that y'all have heard me rant, feel free to rant in my comments about either a book that you did not and was not for you, or a book that was. I would love to hear about something that you have read recently that has affected you in either a very strong, positive, or negative way, especially if it's one of these books and we both happen to like it. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you had to say about that book. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I will give you a thumbs up. I am going to have my vlog that I did for Brianna up here so you can hear some of my thoughts, and then right down here I will have the vlog where I read, I think it was Artificial Condition in. I'll have that down there so you can watch that if you're interested in it as well. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we'll talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! Why did I do jazz hands? Why did I do jazz hands?